We're at the last lesson of a series on the seven doubles, or the inner court, as we're calling it, and its relation to the brain, a part of the nervous system, this thing within us. And we went through each one of the letters, and now we're up to the letter Resh. So today I'm going to do Resh and Tav to conclude the series. So you'll know clearly that the seven doubles begin with Bet and end with Tav, right? And in the middle is Kaf. So last week we talked about how Kaf is spelled Kaf Pei, and we went into the letter Pei from that understanding. And we talked about the letter Pei, and we talked about speech. But as I listened back to the lesson after Ruth edited and put it on the YouTube channel, I was thinking, well, let's really sort of try and, with this last lesson, let's really try to focus in on the wisdom of the whole thing. And when I say wisdom of it, I mean the experience, like what really is going to matter when you're done listening to these lessons is going to be how you can experience the energies of these letters in the chambers within yourself, right? This holy inner court within yourself. How is this experience becoming real in our meditation? And while we're getting some understanding in this series about what the author of the Sefer Yetzirah is telling us about the way these particular seven Hebrew letters, these seven names, how those energies are used in formation and creation, right? So we're having an understanding of them. We can't have an experience of them from me talking or you talking or you reading or anything like that. The only way to have the experience of the energy of Resh, which we're discussing today, and Tav, is to experience it in that inner court. And we touched on the experience a little bit last week and the week before when we were discussing Kaf and Pei. Because Kaf is in the center of the seven doubles. So we have Bet, Gimel, Dalet, and then we have Kaf. And then we have Pei, Resh, and Tav. And Kaf represents the sun, the energy of the sun, and the center of our nervous system, and the center of the brain, and the thalamus. And it's also thought of in a Kabbalistic way. It's like the internal priesthood of who we are. And it reflects the energy coming out of the Holy of Holies of pure consciousness. So we talked about that experience. We meditate on any of our letters, the letters that we were initiated in. We meditate, and then we experience finer and finer states of the relative within us, just naturally, through this process of running and returning. And as we experience running and returning, we go deeper and deeper. And we might not even notice it, but we begin to experience the energies of all of the letters as we sort of march deep within ourselves. And many of these chambers within ourselves, so to speak, these doors are open, allowing us to experience those energies. I remember Bear asked the question, what's the key that opens the door? And traditionally, the answer to that are these holy names. The names of these letters are the keys that open those doors. So, but things begin to come in our experience. And as they come, sound, a finest relative sound that comes from pure silence. Pure silence begins to, and then a Holy of Holies, begins to vibrate. And with that vibration comes some sound. It's a unique sound that the custodians of this tradition know and understand. So when the students come and say, I was meditating, silent, and then the sound came, you immediately recognize this. And that sound becomes light within us. So as if we're in the Holy of Holies, in this experience of pure silence. The vibration comes, there's a sound and a light that we experience deep within ourselves. And then we talked about how that sound and light becomes part of our internal, our still small voice within us. So it turns into, in that pay, our own sound, internal sound and external sound. We talked about how pay really means mouth. So now we're on to Reish. Reish. So the way Reish, the name Reish is spelled Reish Yud Shin. And Reish is interesting because in Hebrew very often it has a meaning of poverty, not like we discussed with Kaf being wealth and poverty, but on the level of Reish being the letter that is sort of furthest from the Aleph. If we look at the Aleph bet in a linear way, right? And you might say, oh, that would be Tav. Well, in one sense it would be, but in the sense of creation, as things vibrate from pure silence and become creation, they get to grosser and grosser levels of creation, right? And you would think that that understanding of that is that it's further and further away from that pure silence. But what we're doing, and the Sefer Yetzirah says, make the letter a king, make Reish a king, bind a crown to it, and make it sit on its throne. That's a poetic way of saying, allow even the grossest relative. So you go through all the letters, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, all the way to Reish, the grossest relative, its essence. The throne is the Aleph, and that pure consciousness that's within the Reish. But if we have Reish without its connection to the Aleph and the pure silence, then we have poverty. And it's a spiritual kind of poverty. You could have all the money in the world and be the poorest person in the world because that connection isn't there, right? In the Aramaic, Reish means head. So Aramaic is an ancient language like Hebrew, only it's slightly different than Hebrew. It uses the Hebrew letters. So some of the words are different. In Hebrew, head is Rosh, like Rosh Hashanah, head of the year. In Aramaic, head is Reish, just like the letter. And it's spelled just like I said, Reish Yud Shin. So it's at the top, it's at the pinnacle of the relative sphere of creation. The Sefer Yetzirah tells us its foundation is seed, Zerah, which is spelled Zayin Resh Ayin. So when we think of seed, what do we think of? Well, who knows? I guess it depends on your experience, right? And what you might think of. But what most of us think of is creation, a new life, right? If we think of it, if we're gardeners and we think of seed, our seeds are the potential. It's the beginning of a new life. We plant the seed in the ground, we water it, we weed, and we make sure that it's good, and it grows into a tomato plant, and we eat nice tomatoes, and we get plenty of vitamin C, and we don't get sick like me. So that's what we think of when we think of seed. So now if you imagine within yourself this Holy of Holies and the Kaf within us being a reflection of pure consciousness, and that moving through the finest levels of thought into more gross levels of thought, into sound and light within us. And when we actually speak, the next thing is seed. We're sowing seeds when we speak. So the transpose, remember the double letters, there's the foundation and the transpose. The transpose, the opposite, like with bet, life and death, with resh is seed and desolation. So desolation is what happens when we are becoming like co-creators and speaking, but we're speaking in a way that is not connected to the divine Ein Sof within us, to that Holy of Holies. So we all know how that goes. We talked a little bit about it last week. So when we speak without touching consciousness, we are still sowing seeds, right? Every word that we speak. I wrote something down here from the Zohar that I just wanted to share. I'm trying to make this not too long, but I'm covering 2 letters, so please bear with me on this. This is from the Zohar, Beshelah portion. Every word that man speaks, whether it be good or bad, causes a vibration in the higher spheres. So when Resh is duly connected to pure consciousness within us, right? That vibration is a positive vibration. And in the supernal world, in the world of Arnan, according to Zohar, that allows good to triumph over evil. And that translates directly to this world, the world of action that we live in, the world of Asiyah, and good triumphs over evil. And the end to that is love and peace and not destruction. So when we do our group meditation, we're always mindful of that. What we're doing is connecting our energies in a positive way, connecting to them, to the Aleph, pure consciousness. And therefore, in the supernal world, as I read from the Zohar, it creates those vibrations. So the opposite of that would be, negative speech, not connected to divine, and then would still cause vibrations. Only the vibrations would have the opposite of what certainly all of us here are desired effect, which is in the end love and peace. So this is that thing that's going on. And the next letter, Tav, is spelled Tav, Vav, right? And Vav, as we know, and I've been saying for years now since we started this Sunday class, is the greatest of the connecting letters. So Tav is at the end. It's not only the last double letter, but it's also the end of the alphabet, no matter how you look at it, right? But the Tav connects with its Vav back to the Aleph in the beginning. So it's a circle, right? So we have the energy flowing out, vibrating out of Aleph, going through all the other names, creation, formation, action, all of that, and circling back through Tav and reconnecting in that beautiful circle. So Tav actually means stamp. So in looking at it as the last letter of the series, it represents, so Resh is the energy of Mercury in the planets, and Tav is the energy of the moon. Resh is the last day of the week before Shabbos, and Tav is Shabbos, Shabbat, as we say in Sephardic. So the foundation of the Tav is called Memshalah. Memshalah literally means government in Hebrew, but it's translated when folks like Kaplan or Suarez are translating the Sefer Yetzirah, Memshalah, they say victory or dominance. And it's related to all of the other 6 double letters in that we now, through opening those doors and those chambers within ourselves, we now are the governors of all of those foundations and transposes of energy. Does that make sense? So we reach the Tav, we experience it, we allow it to sit on the throne and be a king. So it's connected to pure consciousness, which enables us to be a governor of all of the inner court. So think what that means. It means that we have victory over those things: life and death, peace and war, wealth and poverty. All of these things that we've discussed, through that opening of these doors, and we get to the Sabbath, and we get to the moon, and we become like queens ourselves, and we experience victory, the stamp, over all of those doubles, all of those opposites. Doesn't mean that the opposites don't happen. It doesn't mean that, we'll never be in war, or that we'll never die, or that we will never experience the transpose of any of these letters. It just means that we, through touching pure consciousness that transcends these opposites, we're the governors of them. And that has some very actual, pragmatic, real effect in our lives. So the transpose of Memshalah, which is the governance or the victory or their dominance, is subjugation. So to understand the enlightenment of Tav, being Memshalah, which is governance, we take a little brief look at subjugation. Like, what does that mean? Well, that means that we're oppressed by those opposites when we don't have that enlightened victory, right? And that makes sense. You can know that, take bet and life and death. If we fear it, and we fear the existence of it, and there is an acceptance of it, having experienced that which does not die within us, if we experience that, then we have victory over that fear, and we're not subjugated by it. But if we don't connect, and we don't have that experience, that Aleph experience, then naturally we're subjugated by it, and all of those things that come with it. And we did a whole gigantic series on it, right? So that's the ultimate thing. We reach the moon, the Sabbath, and in the brain, the hypothalamus, so the thalamus is sort of that reflection of consciousness. In the hypothalamus, I wrote down a few things from Dr. Tony Nader. I forgot his name last week when we were doing the class, from his book. And he says in his book, the hypothalamus controls the cycles within us, even feeding cycles, the reproductive cycles, hormones. And if we think of it, when we have that governance, and when we have that victory and that sort of dominance over everything, it affects us in a very practical way in the cycles of our lives, in the daily cycles, weekly cycles, monthly cycles. So all of these things sort of come together. So in closing, I want to say the enemy of all of this is rigidity and harsh judgment, right? Because then the neuroplasticity of who we are it no longer exists. We have rigidness within us. And then our transcendence makes it not possible for us to transcend. Alan Watts used to like to say, when anything becomes permanent, it becomes lifeless. So that's the enemy of it. So what do we do to experience this, the mastery, which the Tav energy is, over these energies of the double letters and so forth? We experience them in a state of surrender, effortless surrender, knowing that whatever comes, comes. Our narratives are no longer important. We receive from divine, pure, natural law, and that gives us a victory over it.